Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever in the world you may be joining us from today. My name is Francesco Del Carpio, and I am the CFAL York Operations Coordinator. I would like to officially open the second session of the Climate Change Emergencies and Cultural Heritage Speaker Series, which is being presented in partnership with Heritage Ottawa with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge and recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territory upon which our campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. The area is known as Tkaronto and has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. The territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. As this is an online event and our participants may be joining from various locations, I strongly encourage you to learn about the traditional land upon which you are located. With this, I welcome our moderator, our speaker, and our participants from around the world. Welcome to the webinar. Without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's session, Dr. Kourosh Atarian. Dr. Kourosh Atarian is an associate professor of architecture at the Jundi Shapur University of Technology and a postdoctoral fellow at York University. In 2018, Dr. Atarian became the vice chancellor of the Jundi Shapur Research Institute at the Jundi Shapur University of Technology. Dr. Atarian's research focuses on cultural history and architectural engineering. His research has been published in numerous leading journals on architecture, cultural heritage, and sustainability, and has been published in several books. Dr. Atarian is also a reviewer for several journals, including the Journal of Building Engineering, the Journal of Asian Architecture and Building Engineering, and the Journal of Cultural Heritage Management and Sustainable Development, among others. Dr. Atarian, thank you very much for moderating today's session. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Francesco, for the introduction. Many thanks to Dr. Asghari, the director of CFAL Europe, to plan this speaker series. My name is Kourosh. I will be your moderator in second series of Climate Change Emergencies and Cultural Heritage Speaker Series. And in this session, Dr. Bruno Genito will speak on the impacts of climate change on traditional cultural heritage, case of Helmand River Basin in Sistan, eastern region of Iran. To give a little introduction of our speaker, Dr. Genito is a professor at University of Naples, Orientale Studies, teaching Iranian art history and archaeology and Central Asian art and archaeology. Since 2013, he has served as a director of serious major in the Department of Asia, Africa, and Mediterranean at University of Naples. Dr. Genito has served as a director of Italian Archaeological Mission in Azerbaijan since 2016, the Italian Archaeological Mission in Uzbekistan since 2008, and served as a director of Italian Archaeological Mission in Iran from 2003 to 2014, and in Hungary from 1983 to 1997. He has also vice director of Italian Archaeological Mission in Turkmenistan from 1989 to 1994. As of 2000, Dr. Genito has been a member of advisory board of journal Ancient Civilization from Scotia and Siberia. In 2003, he became the member of permanent liaison committee between European, Japanese archaeologists to facilitate archaeological research by non-nationals in Asia. Dr. Genito has several publications in archaeology and excavation in historic sites in English and Italian language. His field of interest includes Iranian archaeology from Iron Age to Islamic period, archaeology of Central Asia from Iron Age to early medieval time, archaeology of Silk Road, and archaeology of early medieval period in Mediterranean, Eastern Europe, and Central Asia. In addition, Dr. Genito made great steps in digital documentation of archaeological sites using cutting-edge technology in photogrammetry and GIS-based documentation methods, which could be one of the best methods in monitor changing climate impacts on ancient monuments and historic sites. After the session, I will assist moderating the Q&A section, and should any participant have questions, please feel free to post them in Q&A, and we will be reading them through. Dr. Genito, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Atarian.
Just a second for me to share the...
Yes. Yeah, you can go directly to the third slides, which is the first of my presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Before to start my presentation, let me thank very much the organizer of this Climate Change Emergency and Cultural Heritage Speakers Series Session 2, in particular the University of York, the Centre International de Formation des Autorités Leaders in York, his director, Professor Ali Asghari, the United Nations Institute for Training, Research and the Heritage of Ottawa, Professor Kurosh Attarian, and Francesco Del Caprio, who is the York Operation Coordinator, for inviting me and accepted the proposal for my contribution. Many thanks are also due to the numerous other scientific institutions who made possible this session. My paper comes from climate change emergency originated long time ago, most probably since geological eras in a specific eastern province of the Iranian plateau, which is Sistan. Those emergencies strongly conditioned the way of life of people inhabiting that province, who was repeatedly obliged to be in front of very difficult geoclimatic changes, which made their life continuously instable and precarious. The idea of this paper was born when Professor Attarian talked to me about this series of lectures, and I soon was wandering to Sistan and Baluchistan, where I worked more than 50 years ago as a young student in archaeology, and when immediately realized the difficult life of those people living there, among which mostly Baluch and Persian people. My paper, as already told, is mainly dealing with the region in eastern Iran, where the climatic and geological conditions since ever strongly condition the ways of life, the surviving of the peoples living there. One of the historical witnesses of such a situation are the most important archaeological sites in the area, Shari Sokhta from Bronze Age and the Hane Uleman in the Achaemenid time. Sistan and Baluchistan, this is the present name of the region, is the second largest province of the 31 in Iran after that of Kerman, and is located in the southeast of the country, bordering Pakistan and Afghanistan. Its capital is Zaidan. Today, Sistan refers to the narrow strip of the northern margin of the province, and Baluchistan involves whole Zaidan to Chabahar. Combined, Sistan and Baluchistan province today accounts for one of the driest and arid regions of Iran, known for its windstorms, extreme floods, and droughts, with a slight increase to rainfall from east to west and an obvious rise in humidity in the coastal regions. Please, next. Professor Attarian, yeah, okay. And also the other one, next. The area, which has been for a long time approached in the geographical, geological, and archaeological studies as a marginalized territory, is bisected by the Helmand River, the Etumant, the river of abundant dams of the Avestan tradition, the famous book of the Zoroastrian religion, the Etimandros in ancient Greek, the Erimandros in Latin, and the largest in Afghanistan, which empties into terminal lakes as Amun Helmand, Amun Puzak, and Amun Saberi, that forms part of the border between the two countries. Please, next. The province borders South Khorasan province in the north, Kerman province and the Hormozgan province in the west, the Gulf of Oman in the south, and Afghanistan with Nimruz, Helmand, Kandahar provinces and Pakistan in the east. This area is one of the archaeological most teasing, a little known one. This southern eastern portion of the Iranian plateau lies practically surrounded by vast desert. The Helmand River, which is fed by snow melt waters from the mountains of the southern Hindu Kush in Afghanistan, is the main trunk of the Sistan area. The Kash, Farah, and Arashkan rivers collecting, please next, collecting water from the western part of the Indus Kish Ridge also drain towards the Sistan area. Please, next. Water supply, however, is characterized by severe fluctuations that have historically caused natural hazards with affected human settlement and civilization. Historically, in the epigraphic remains in Bisutum Kermanshah province and Persepolis in Fars of the Achaemenid times, Sistan is mentioned as one of the eastern territories ruled by Darius the Great. Please, the next. In the low part, you can see the famous inscription of Bisutun, and in the high pass, you can see the representation of the different groups of people depicted in Persepolis reliefs on the left, and on the right, the general map of the Achaemenid Empire made by Ernest Herzfeld, one of the father of the Iranian archaeology. The more ancient Old Persian name of the region was Zaranka, probably meant waterland. Some representation in Persepolis, most probably amongst other peoples, depict also a group which has been interpreted by the Trajan. Please, the next. Sistan, this older form is also the root of name Zarani, capital of the Afghan Nimruz province. The name Sistan is instead derived from Saka, Sakastan, the land of the Saka, an Iranian nomadic Scythian tribe that had taken control over the area in the middle of 1st century BC, in the 2nd century BC, who from the 2nd century to the 1st century migrated into the Iranian plateau and Indus Valley. In the 4th century, Macedonian king Alexander the Great annexed the region during the conquest, the founded colony of Alexandria in Arachosia, possibly modern Kandahar. In the Bundahijm, a Zoroastrian book in Pahlavi language, the area is called Seyhan Sea, and the province was formed in 240 CA during the reign of the Sasanian king Shapur I in his effort to centralize his political control. The whole Sistan region has been and still also the custodian of a rich series of tradition regarding fundamental figures from the ancient mythological and the legendary grounds on the Iranism and historical, ideological, religious background in late Sasanian and early Islamic time. In the Shahnameh, the famous book of the national poet Ferdowsi, Sistan is also referred as Zabulistan, after the region in the eastern part of present-day Afghanistan, which in this epic is in turn described to be the homeland of the mythological hero, very famous in Iran as Rostam. In 650, Abdallah ibn Amir, after securing his position in Kerman, sent an army under Mujashid to Ibn Masud to Sakastan. The famous Persian ruler Yaqub Latif Safari, whose descendant dominated this area for many centuries, later became governor of this province. The area has already been archaeologically explored in its western part, and a meritorious and extensive work activities were effected by Goldsmith in 1876, Sykes in 1922, Tate in 1903, 1905, Stein in 1915-16, and later in a more limited measures, Herzfeld, 1926. A French team in 1936 and some years later an American visited the western Afghan part of the region where more later archaeological activities were conducted as well. The archaeological research activities of the Italian Istituto Italiano per il Medio ed Estremo Oriente, represented directly by its president Giuseppe Tucci in Sistan, and the Service of the Iranian Antiquities began in fall 1959 following an agreement stipulated between both parts. The activities were conducted and directed by Maurizio Tosi and Umberto Scerrato, respectively, in Shari Sokta and Anegulaman. Please, there are different slides. This is one with the list of the main sites excavated or analyzed by the Italian. Shari Sokta, Dane Gulaman, Kulkaje, Kalaisam, Kalaitepe, Bibidost. The next one. These are most part of the books written in English and in Italian about the Saka immigration in Drajana, the historical research in Sistan, these studies in honor of death of Umberto Scerrato. Please, the next one. This is also a congress organized by myself. This is the publication in theory of our activity in the Hanegulaman. please, another one. This is the satellite photo of the site of Danegulaman, and you can see some of the most important building. You can see this, number 2, number 3, number 16, number 15. Please, next one. And these are some of our friends and companions. Most of them, they are dead, unfortunately. These are some slides about the city of the Danegulaman. Please, next one. And next one also. Please. Okay. Once therefore completed the archaeological survey, during which, amongst other such, it was identified a very particular one by name Danegulaman. I can merely emphasize that till now, from an archaeological point of view, the historical time, and in particular the first dynastic period, the Achaemenid region remains almost practically unknown. There were possibly exceptions in Nadia Ali in Afghanistan. In the last decades, on the basis of a rather systematic territorial survey named Systematic Archaeological Survey of Sistan in 2010, more and more sites have been discovered, among which at least hundreds, the former one still, yes, 100 sites are considered belonging from Achaemenid to Parthian time. Please, next one. The Helmand Basin, in particular, rests between the region of Western Afghanistan, which is part of the staple Eurasian plate to the east, and the Sistan Sutur zone in eastern Iran to the west. Indeed, the Iran-Afghanistan border in Sistan roughly follows a tectonic boundary separating the distributed deformation in eastern Iran from the virtually aseismic region of Western Afghanistan. The Sistan Sutur zone, please, next, was formed in the frame of the major Alpine Himalayan mountain system formation, which involves a series of microcontinental blocks and references, exempli Grazia, the Lut and Afghan blocks. More in detail. Sistan Sutur zone separates the Afghan block to the east from the Lut block to the west. Shortening the Sistan Sutur zone, which initiated in the late Cretaceous, was followed by extensive post-Miocene, roughly north-south tending right lateral strike slip faulting in response to the late phase of collision between Arabia and the Eurasian along the Zagros Mountain southwest. Please, next. Abundant evidence displays drainage system and alluvial fans is associated. Deformation is marked by moderate to strong earthquakes with magnitude major than 7. The presence of quaternary alluvial deposit, fluvial terraces, and sand dunes testifies the alluvial, fluvial, and lacustrine and aeolian erosion depositional process which have sculpted the landscape and controlled the environment of the Sistan Basin. Please, next. Geomorphological analysis of Sistan Basin topography and hydrographic net has allowed identifying the main depositional tectonic lithological control and fluvial landform. Please. The main fluvial feature is represented by the peculiar Helmand River path, which is characterized by an abrupt bend as its outlet in Sistan Basin. The north-south oriented Helmand segment follows the eastern border of Sistan Basin. No, please, the former one. Still the former one. Yes, okay. The peculiar Helmand River path and is marked rectilinear for a length of about 100 kilometers. Another rectilinear north-south oriented river is roughly aligned with the north-south trending in Helmand River. Excuse me. Yeah. If you can stay on this, I will tell you when to change.
Okay, it has autoplay. Maybe it's on the autoplay, so I have to.
Okay, I'm sorry. The main depositional landform consists of alluvial fan bodies, which occur along both the eastern and western boundaries of the Sistan Basin. The largest alluvial fan, about 5,000 square kilometers in width, is located along the eastern border of the basin. It is fed by the Helmand River and spanned from the southern depot center up to the main basin in the central portion of the basin. On the surface of this fan, the archaeological site investigated within this study rest. You can go ahead. Yeah, the two sites, this is Dayanegulaman. The other one, please, next. Yeah, Sharisokte, the Americanized form of the pronunciation of the Iranian Sharisokte. The bronze site rises at the western boundary of this surface. To the northeast of east, the second surface develops. On such a surface, Dayanegulaman rests. The third surface is identified toward east, close to the eastern boundary of the Sistan Basin. Western boundary of Sistan Basin is characterized by the presence of a large pediment that follows the Sistan Sutur zone range. The pediment is 6,000 square kilometers wide and is characterized by the presence of east-west elongated college and alluvial fans. The development of large urban cultures in the Iranian plateau, as is known, has been hindered by both geomorphological setting and environmental features. The plateau is mostly drained by rivers with torrential and seasonal character. In a desert environment such as the Sistan Basin in Iran, a key role for the development of human settlement is represented by the presence of water. Indeed, a decrease in precipitation in the mid-Holocene is envisaged to have had a detrimental effect on Bronze Age society in eastern Iran. Probably because of fault activity, the Helmand River course was displaced through the time with related shifting of fluvial and alluvial fan deposition toward northeast and east, as it is inferred from Landsat satellite images analysis over the last 45 years. The study area has been characterized by two large wetlands represented, you can go ahead, by Godezerre Lake, which is this green one, which is a very ancient, geologically ancient depression. And you can also go ahead. And in particular, the abandonment of the first site could most likely be linked to the Helmand River deviation, to the consequent water supplies decrease in the area. These are some slides made by myself in 1984, which still some water was present in the Amun basin. Now is completely dried, and there is no any trace of water anyway. Finally, the reconstruction carried out in this work allows to highlight the possibility that further archaeological sites may be presented even near the Godezerre. Please go ahead. Many questions nevertheless remain still open, and a further scientific effort is needed as to give a more useful and better defined form to the complexity of data from the archaeological work. The life conditions of the region, as is well known, have always depended on the waters of the inland Helmand River and on those of the terminal lakes already mentioned, where it flows. The area, once rich and prosperous, has undergone a considerable reduction in its economic potential, but please, you can stay, yes, to change in climatic and geotectonic conditions and to historical vicissitude, especially following the decline of the Timurid area. The region presents a typical desert climate with a very high humidity fluctuation, the presence of seasonal winds for different directions, the most important of which are the 120 days day with known as Levar, the seventh wind, the Nambi, and south wind, the Ushak, the humid and seasonal winds of the Indian Ocean. A pattern of dry spells followed by heavy rains and larger than usual spring snow melts is putting the whole historical art and architecture heritage at risk of destruction, which may collapse and suffer from severe erosion because conditioned directly by climate change. The erosion processes are much faster, the rains more devastating, and the wind erosion stronger, which has an extremely harsh impact on it. The land is very fragile geologically, especially as vegetation cover has greatly diminished because of erosion that had increased considerably over the last 30 years. Climate change has long been a reality the residents have had to confront. The weather is changing. Now summers are warmer and winters colder. Many of the artifacts predate the arrival of Islam to the region, and even though they come from another religion, the residents proudly defended the area history as their own. It aims to educate visitors about the urgent needs to preserve the area's cultural heritage. There is no benefit if people just see without information. Archaeologists readily admit that erosion is increasing, but say the real danger comes from human influence at the site, including looters who are rampant. The future of cultural heritage depends on the national vulnerability to climate change and its ability to adapt. Thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you, Professor Genito, for your amazing speech. And now we are looking to Q&A section for any questions. Let me check. Oh, no questions yet. And the chat box. Actually, I have a question while you were presenting, sorry. But, you know, we all know that you have the experience of excavating and working on historic sites in different parts of the Eastern Europe, Middle East, Asia, and many other places. And definitely they have different climate conditions, from desert climate to moderate and cold weather. And in which region could you observe more impacts of changing climate on historic site, or if any considerable? As you said, there are many impacts, but would you please define which places and in which climate region you see the impacts of climate change more in such areas?
Yeah, I would say that all the archaeological and cultural heritage now are at risk in the world because the climate changes. But for my experience and from the given geomorphological and climatic situation, I would say that Sistan for the moment is probably the most at risk. There is one reason, not only the climate fluctuation was very old in the area. So all the people living in Sistan had to confront with this climatic and repeatedly climatic change. The situation is now particularly complicated because the Helmand River is practically shifting completely to the east. And so in a few years, and probably also now, the Helmand is practically going back to Afghanistan, which means that all the territory, the Sistanic territory, this is a modern activity. So there is a tectonic activity, which probably in a few decades will completely make empty the water from Sistan region. And as you can imagine, it is a very difficult situation, which was never happened since the geological area, because the first terminal lake, according to the geological area, was the Gaudit Zirre, which is full completely in Afghanistan. Then the river was fluctuating and shifting a little bit. Sharisokta, for example, is the city, the Bronze Age site, which was located in the delta of the Helmand, a little bit southwest. The Anegulaman was 2,000 years later located in the delta a little bit more east. now the delta probably is disappearing from the Iranian territory and will be probably in few decades in the Afghanistan. Just imagine the situation which will be in front of Afghan nation and Iran Sistan, Sistan for next time. Of course, the climatic change is a historical facts which now we have pay much attention than before. But there are some climatic facts, some climatic changes which are we started very long time ago, and Sistan is one of these areas. In Europe, the situation is completely different because there is not an arid climate area, and also in most part of the Middle East, there are, for example, in Mesopotamia, there are still active, very important long river like Tigris and Euphrates. In India also there are many important rivers, Ganges and Indus. Iran, as I told you before, is not rich of big rivers. The only very important river is the Helmand, which is only partially crossing Sistan eastern region, and unfortunately is still again shifting to the east. And just imagine when it will completely disappearing from the Iranian territory. I don't hear you. I don't see you speak.
We cannot hear you, sir.
Yeah, okay. Unfortunately, Professor Atterani, I don't listen to you, but I saw the question. If you allow me, I can answer anyway.
Yes, please go ahead. Yes.
Okay. Now I can hear you.
That is me. That's Ali.
This is yours. Okay. Focusing on the danger these sites face, specifically looters, are there any mitigation plans in place that are effective? This is a very significant question. Of course, Iran is strongly paying attention to the looters. The laws in your country is particularly strict and particularly severe against the looter, against the antique dealers. And so I'm sure that if anything happens in this kind of situation with the antique dealers and looters, the nation of Iran will respond adequately. But still, the looters generally are helped illegally by some other people, not the official, of course, representative of the state, but they are helped by different. I remember even, this is a very light question, but in 1974, some of our workmen, one you have seen in the slides, were using to bring Baluch people and Farsi people from Iran illegally to Afghanistan, because the site of Dani Gulaman is 30 kilometers far from the boundaries. At that time, which the situation was completely different from now, there was not the drugs market, there was not such dry situation like in these days. And I can imagine that if the looters want to do something and they are helped by somebody, they can do something till now, unfortunately.
Thank you. And another question by
Yes.
Nober regarding cultural changes over time. Would you say there are drivers to this that are probably beyond human intervention? Are inhabitants of these areas getting used to these changes because they think there are no possible intervention?
You know, this is also a very important question. As I know and as I remember, the people of Sistan knows very well the situation, and they are so much used through generation to move themselves. And also the site, for example, of the Anegulaman was simply abandoned. There was no destruction. There was no enemies. There was no, simply the people abandoned the site because the channels and probably the tributary of the Helmand River were became suddenly or in a short time dry. So I'm sure that the people they know how to do. And from 1975, which was the last year I was in Sistan, the Iran was building different kind of artificial basin containing water. And there are at least in place of the terminal lakes, which are not more existing because of the dryness and the finishing of the river. So there are at least 3 or 4 large basins from where the people can take and get water for agricultural activities, and so they know how to manage. But anyway, still the situation is dangerous. The future, I see it will be more complicated than now.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question myself.
Yes, please.
While you were excavating and while the operation of excavation, I just want to know in the underground artifacts which are located in the undergrounds, could you see any impacts of climate change on the artifacts which is located under the ground when while excavation process? During these years that you were excavating, you know, from the early, you know, when you were, you said that you were very young, and right now.
You know, I understand that also this is particularly significant from historical point of view. You'd have to consider also when you are talking about archaeological remains or objects or whatever you can find in underground, that the architecture in that area, in that region, are made by mud bricks. And mud bricks in itself is a very fragile element. And I remember, and you could also have seen in one of my last satellites photo from the buildings of the site, of the Anegulaman, the walls were a little bit whitish because the Iranian and Italian archaeologists at that time, they started a restoration activity, practically recovering the structure with different kind of kagel. Kagel, you know what it means in Persian, which is a kind of
modern straw.
That's right. And at that time, there was many conservation congress on mud brick in Iran, and not only. They were trying to consider to put together, mixing different kind of soils, different kind of gel, so vegetables and so on. Now I think those kind of congress are not anymore taking activity, because we realize finally that there is only one way to preserve the mud brick: rebuilding with the same contents, with the same kind of soil, with the same kind of geld of vegetables. Because till now, the people living in most villages in the Iranian desertic area are doing this every 10 years, every 15 years. They rebuild the mud bricks, they rebuild the covering, they rebuild kagel. I was working also in Isfahan, in Masjid Juma in Isfahan. I remember in 2004, 2005, there was a strong snow and a strong rain, and it was November, December, and they started to renew and recover all the roof of the mosque from, of course, the external part, with again new kagel, and they were rebuilding, remaking with different kind of gel, the different kind of soil, putting together and using to cover the roof of the mosque. And the mosque is in the city. The mosque is made by bricks, is made by stones, is made by alabaster, is made by tiles, the famous colored turquoise, Timurid, and Safavid kashi, you say kashi in Iranian. And they were still using, covering the roof of the mosque, which is an old Seljuk monument, but anyway, they were using to recover the roof with, again, new kagel. So this also is important because you cannot, I remember some ideas in those years were taking in consideration the possibility to cover all the side with a kind of, how can I say, plexiglass or something, I don't remember exactly. And it was a stupid thing. At the time, of course, the knowledge was not like now, but there is no any possibility because also the site was partially covered by sand dunes. And the sand dunes, you were talking, or somebody was talking about the human intervention. In that case, there was not human. The wind intervention was much more destructive of the human one, because the small particles of sand are made by very cutting material, and they cut immediately after years, after decades, after century, the texture of the mud bricks architecture.
And is it the same for the potteries? Or
yeah, the potteries, you know, pottery is a is a particularly chemical transformation of clay made by oven, by kilns. And so you can break down the vessel, as generally we found fragments, and you can also try to make powder, but still the powder of pottery never became clay again. There remains particles of pottery, minuscule, very fragmented, unusable, but they still remain pottery. So to destroy pottery, it is very, the nature cannot do. Maybe the man can do in the machine. You can put some, I don't know, pressing activity and so on. But generally, we found the surface of the pottery mostly covered by sand lines and sand particles, small destruction activity also.
Thank you. And we have another question by Norbert. Norbert, I am so true. Was it possible to incentivize the natives so they stay back in these areas? I ask this because they have stayed in these areas for a long time, and I mean any incentive to get them to probably stay. I mean,
you know. No, I'm not going to Sistan since many years, unfortunately, but I have sent some of my students 2 years ago, and they were going through the sites. They were going through the village. There is a small village close to Danegulaman, which is called Kaleino, which means new castle, new fortification, and so on. Still, there are some parents of our workmen living there now. And also they were telling to the students, why don't you come back again working in the area? Because as you can imagine, it was not because of the Italians, but it was for everybody who are going there. They are very hospitable people, and they are very proud to be in charge of a scientific activity, which probably they do not know exactly the value, but they appreciate it very much. So according to my knowledge, some people, the heirs of those workmen, are still living there, and I don't think they will move easily, except if the climate condition will be so dangerous and so unliving possibility. I heard about some people, I have some photos, some people were greeting to the Italians by movie, also a small movie. But I repeat, it's not a problem of the Italians, it's a problem of a human relationship, of human community, which was at that time very much founded in the deeply life condition of the people.
Thank you. We have another question, which is related to the other question, and it's by Ali. How do you see the future of the Sistan province, considering the current climate change impacts? Yes, it's related, but I think that the climate inhabitants, maybe you can say, and I want to know that it's about the living heritage,
Yeah.
Yes, as you said, that the people who were riding the boats in, right now they're disappeared. So, what do you see the scene of and the perspective of the future of the Sistan and the regarding to living heritage, maybe in impacts on the inhabitants?
From of course, I don't know the future. I cannot know exactly what will happen.
What's your
with the river. No, with the river fluctuation, and according to tectonic movement of the soil, in few decades the river will be completely in Afghanistan. But from this point of view, I'm not hopeless, because I'm sure that country, so Iran and the national authorities, about this possibility, they are thinking, that they are trying to consider any better possibility to try to keep the people living there. Of course, it will be necessary, according to my experience, to have an agreement between the two countries, because if the river is continuously fluctuating to Afghanistan, there should be an agreement between Afghanistan and Iran to try to solve the question of this kind of fluctuation. I do hope the two countries will have the right sensibility to produce ideas, to create possibility, and starting with the artificial basin, as I told you. If you see to the Google Maps, you can see at least 4 big artificial basins, which are completely different from the terminal lakes, which were natural. These artificial. And so I'm sure that they can try to find out an agreement, political, cultural, for the future of the mankind living, because also on the Afghan sides, the situation is not very easy too. And also there is a small province in Afghanistan with the same name, Sistan. So there are 2 Sistan regions which will have more or less the same problems. I do hope very much the 2 countries can find an agreement for solve the question. Of course, if the river fluctuation stops, maybe something differently can happen in the course of the future of those populations. But if the trend is that one, in few decades, the river will not be anymore in Iranian plateau.
Thank you, Genito. There's no questions left, so thank you everyone for this session. And as you know, this speaker series is a great platform to share knowledge and experience from many professional fields of cultural heritage and climate change studies. We hope that you are able to join us in upcoming sessions. Many thanks from Dr. Genito. And now I hand it to Professor Asghari for closing the session.
Thank you to you very much for this opportunity.
Yes, thank you very much, Kuresh, and thank you very much, Bruno, for very interesting conversations about this very important topic. you highlighted some of the key challenges that the community and people have, and based on what you clearly described, it is a global phenomenon. It is also very well connected between nations, between countries, and we can also learn from each other in terms of how best we can protect both living heritage as well as heritage sites that are, of course, very important in many different ways. And each country has its own challenges in with regard to impacts of climate change. But we definitely need to learn from each other. And thank you very much for your contribution and very interesting examples of some of the cases, and also giving us some hopes that, you know, despite of all these challenges, hopefully people find, you know, ways to tackle these challenges and find ways to protect themselves and their heritage despite of these challenges. But this definitely needs support from all levels of government, civil society, as well as private sector to make that happen. And really appreciate your contribution to our speaker series, and I'm sure many participants learn from this. I didn't have a chance to ask question, but I think it would be nice to close it with your own recommendations for future generations of maybe students, researchers, if they want to focus on this area, what it should be their priorities if they really want to protect heritage, whether living or heritage site, facing climate change in different kinds. I think that would be something that we would like to close this session with. If you don't mind, please give us some directions and recommendations, and especially for future generations.
Yes, I think that the archaeological heritage can help very much, because if you evaluate a territory from historical point of view, it means tourism, it means money, it means some also social promotion in the territory, and it can help very much for the future, certainly.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Francesco, do we have a slide to show for our next session, please? All right. So we will see you all in 2 weeks from now. That is November 6th at 12 p.m. Toronto time, with another talk that would be of interest as well by David Simpson from Heritage Resilience International and National Trust on withstanding change, heritage amongst climate uncertainty. We also would like to thank all the participants for today's session. Looking forward to your participation again. And please share the information about this session to everyone. We record these sessions with permission from the speakers. We make it available on our YouTube channel so that those who miss this session and also those who will join this conversation in the future can have access to them. Please stay in touch, and thank you very much, all of you. And thank you, Kurosh, again, and thank you, Francesco, for facilitating, moderating, and organizing the session as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.